We're hiking. This is like a pretty spot for me.
I was gonna say.
Say hi, it's your face reveal.
Hey gamers, what's going on?
Hi everybody, it's Sydney, also known as Synopsis. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, welcome. I hope you're doing well. I thought that I would give you my top 10 books of all time because that is the best way to know if I am a booktuber that you want to subscribe to, you know. So the books that I'm going to talk about today are my top 10 books of all time, the books that I constantly tell my friends to read. Never shut up to my friends about these books. And this is my bestie.
I'm Steve, by the way.
Who literally always hears me talk about these books. Steve has literally read 4 out of the 10 of these books because I will not shut up about them. And I will always spoil them too. I have a hard time not spoiling books. Almost accidentally spoil storylines all the time. So that's why I need people to read them, so I can talk about them unfiltered. Growing up, when my dad didn't care about stories that I read, he would just say, quote,
"You can spoil it for me, I'm never going to read this."
So now as an adult, I struggle to not overshare every single part of the story. So thanks, Dad, for that. Of course, as I start filming this video, my blood sugar is low, so not sponsored, but these have saved my life on multiple occasions. I have these sporadically hidden throughout my car and my purse and my pantry. So if this company ever does sponsors and I ever get that big, that would be cool. Also, I guess another shout out to my dad because he's the reason that I tried these in the first place, so thanks, Dad. I guess this is a snack break before we get to the video.
Here's a little one.
Do you want one, Steve?
Yeah, I'll take one.
I guess this is an ASMR channel too.
Oh my god, dude.
Now that we fixed my blood sugar problem, we can start talking about the books that I love. The first book that I'm going to be talking about today is the one that basically has shaped how I am as a reader. It's the reason why I love dual perspective books, why I love young adult romance, basically why I love to read. Funny because I stopped reading after I read this book because it destroyed me so much. So, do with that warning what you will. This book will destroy you. This is All the Bright Places by Jennifer Niven. This is a semi-autobiographical, I always struggle to say that word, biographical.
You got this.
Biography, there it is. Is that right?
Autobiography?
Autobiography. Yeah. Never mind. I have now realized that it's not an autobiography. It's just loosely based on the author's first love. I should probably mention that I'm diabetic and so I'm snacking because my blood sugar is low. Oh, okay. Violet and Finch meet on the bell tower of their school as they're both contemplating suicide, and they both talk each other off the ledge. Then they become each other's partners on a school project for their senior year. Its project is to discover cool places where they live in Indiana. So they spend a lot of the book traveling, finding these very cool, unique places and kind of falling in love. It switches perspectives in both chapters. It's dual perspective. It goes Violet Finch. This book is in the perspective of Violet counting down to a very important point in the story, and the perspective of Finch in each day of the story. So at the beginning of each chapter for Violet says like 100 days till, and the beginning of the chapter for Finch says day 71, which I think is very interesting. This book is a bipolar disorder awareness book. What Violet doesn't know in the story is that Finch struggles with bipolar disorder, which puts a very big strain on their relationship because he will disappear for days and it leaves Violet very confused. But I think it's really good. Reading it as a 17-year-old and growing up and now digesting the book, I really think that it's really good for people that were my age to read it now. If you want to be emotionally destroyed, please read this book. Next book I'm going to talk about is, you know, in my last video I mentioned that I love the miscommunication trope. And so of course I love Normal People by Sally Rooney, because that is basically the whole book. It's just one miscommunication after another between Connell and Marianne. No shade to the character Marianne, it's just after I read this book, I watched the show and the guy who plays Connell is just really hot. So that's why I can't remember her name, because sorry. This is about a girl named Marianne in her senior year of high school. This book takes place in Dublin, Ireland, which Sally Rooney is from. If you know Sally Rooney as an author, she does not use quotation marks. Not that it would bug me that she doesn't use quotation marks, but I actually really liked it. It was very refreshing. It kind of put the story more in their heads, and so it kind of blurred the lines of what information was going to be relayed to one or the other. Marianne is pretty wealthy. She's a bit of a loner. People think she's pretty weird. But she meets Connell, who is pretty popular at her school because Connell's mom is her family's housekeeper. So he comes over frequently to pick up his mom from work, and one day his mom stays late and they end up talking. But the thing about it is they keep their friendship a secret until their friendship blossoms into a friends with benefits situation. And that kind of just adds a layer of tension throughout the whole book. She's like, oh, I'm not worthy of his love because he won't tell his friends that he likes me because he's embarrassed of me, and this causes a bunch of anger. So yeah. And then they end up miraculously going to the same college, where the roles kind of reverse. Marianne is pretty popular, a lot of the guys like her, and Connell is a little less popular. People think he's kind of weird, and so that kind of switches the dynamic a little bit, and that also adds more tension in the book. So I think it's a really good book because it talks about so many of the accidental miscommunications that two people who are growing up from like high school kids to young adults can have when they have like confusing feelings about, you know, their self-esteem or, you know, the whole confusion area. So their whole relationship basically is just friends with benefits, but they do genuinely love each other. In the book, it is a lot of thoughts and feelings, and you get a lot more information than you do in the show. In the show, it is definitely more friends with benefits. So, Normal People by Sally Rooney. Please read it, it's really good. Next book is Crying in H-Mart by Michelle Zauner, and I have actually met her, and she has actually dedicated this book signing to me, so yeah! But I read this book and it actually motivated me to learn Korean so I could talk to my grandmother better. Michelle Zauner is from Eugene, Oregon, and I am from the Portland, Oregon area, so the places she talks about in this book are places that I've actually grown up going to, which is super, super cool. This book is about her growing up with her rough relationship with her mom, and then her mom is diagnosed with terminal cancer, and she suffers with a lot of guilt about not learning about her mother's heritage and, you know, not being nicer to her mom. And so whenever she goes to H-Mart, she gets overwhelming feelings of guilt and sadness because she can never share those moments with her mom anymore. And it's very good. It talks about grief in a way that is just indescribable. Like, I think it's really important for people This book made me want to learn more about my Korean heritage because I come from a multicultural background. I'm Chinese, Korean, and a whole lot of European. My grandma is the only Korean person in my dad's side. I grew up with a lot of Chinese culture, so this made me want to learn more about my Korean side before it was too late. So I'm very thankful that I was able to, you know, start learning Korean and read her story. Please support her. She's genuinely like the sweetest person I've ever met. Her event at Powell's took so long because she kept talking to everybody and signing their books, and I have a picture with her, so that's great. Anyways, yes, read this book, please. Next is going to be a book that I read this year. This is XOXO by Axie Oh. She is also the author of The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea, which is, if you love Studio Ghibli, like me, you should totally read. This book is about a K-pop star and a normal girl, Jenny and Jae-woo. They have one night together where they are exploring the city of Los Angeles, and then all of a sudden, after they exchange numbers, he just kind of disappears and she doesn't hear from him until she decides to go to a music academy in Korea to get a letter of recommendation from the Korean Institute of Seoul, I think is the name of this school. You'll find out if you read it. Because her grandma is diagnosed with a sickness and she wants to go get to know her before it's too late. But she discovers there that Jae-woo is a part of a K-pop group called XOXO. And they start to have a secret relationship. So yeah, it was amazing. And it was very similar to the new show XOXO Kitty. But this one is better, in my opinion. I literally read this book in like 4 hours. I sat down in my bed, I opened it, and I closed it in the same period of time. You need to read this. It is so important for topics that have been discussed for the past, like, ever. It is about a teenager named Star who is getting a ride home from one of her family friends, and he gets pulled over. And when he is about to reach for his registration, he gets shot right in front of her and he dies. You know, gun violence is really an issue that we have in America. And just the themes, social justice, racism, discrimination, police brutality, it just covers all of these topics so tragically, very hard to get through, and talks about very heavy topics in a naive perspective. I'm kind of trying to be careful what I say because I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying that this is a really easy read, because it's not. It's a very important read. The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. Before I end talking about this book, I just want to point out that it is a banned book, and I think that is, excuse my language, bullshit, because this is a very important book for white people. I just think that this gives a perspective of a certain world that some people are very privileged to not see, and I think it literally puts you in other people's shoes, and I think that it is a very good exercise of empathy. Banning books is literal bullshit, and we should not be doing that. One of the reasons why I love Japanese literature so much, this is The Phone Booth at the Edge of the World by Laura Imai Messina. I don't want to pronounce that wrong, so I'm sorry if I did. It is about the tsunami in Japan of 2011 and how there is a hiking trail up a hill to an empty phone booth where people can, you know, put the phone up to their ear and talk to their loved ones or relatives that were killed in the natural disaster. It is about a woman named Yu who loses her mother and her daughter in the tsunami, and so she starts walking up to the phone booth, but she can never quite get into it until she comes across Takashi, who lost his wife in the tsunami, and basically they start meeting up there and they develop a very special relationship. The way this book talks about grief is so beautiful, and I read this after I had a few deaths in my family. I just think you should read it. It's such an easy read. There are so many pretty illustrations in it, and the chapters are really short, and it's just so beautiful. I want to read a little snippet of the book because the way that this book portrays grief is so beautiful. I actually annotated this book, which I don't annotate books very often, but I wanted to read a little snippet of how it depicts grief. So it says, "Grief," Yui had once told him, "is something you ingest every day, like a sandwich cut in small pieces, gently chewed and then calmly swallowed. Digestion was slow, and so, Takeshi thought, joy must work the same way." So if you are someone that has been struggling with how to digest your grief or how to, come to terms with it, I think this is a very important and easy read if you are not a very big reader. I think I got through this in about a day, and I'm a pretty avid reader, so it might take you about 2 or 3. I think it's a really important book for everybody. The Last Story of Mina Lee by Nancy JooYoung Kim, she's very sweet by the way, is a book that you will see in my September wrap-up because I just read this and I immediately added to this pile of books that will stick with me forever. It is about a girl named Margot who hasn't heard from her mom in a few days, so she decides to drive from Seattle, Washington to Los Angeles and ends up opening the door to find her mother dead. Then she basically realizes that she didn't really know much about her mother. She mostly just resented her whole childhood. She wants to uncover what happened to her mom. So the way that this book is set up is so amazing because it is dual perspective. We get Margot's perspective in 2014, and then we get Mina's perspective in 1987 when she first immigrates here. So the story flips back and forth between them, and as Margot discovers these things about her mom, the chapter flips and you find out how it happened or who the person that she's learning about is or who Margot's father is because Mina was a single mom. It was perfect to get into for fall. If you like mystery and suspense, if you like immigration stories, this is perfect for you. This reminded me a lot about my grandmother who immigrated here in the 1970s from Korea with no Korean family. It's like Mina, and I actually had a Instagram DM chat with the author about how much I love this story between Mina and Margot and how much it reminded me of my grandma, and basically it just highlights the immigrational struggle that a lot of first generation immigrants have when moving to another country and having to adapt to new languages and a new way of life, and it talks about that a lot, which I think is another perspective that is very important to read about. So I accidentally did one of my top 3s, but this was my third top 3. If you know me, you know that Jin Lee is my queen. She is my favorite author of all time, and I love her so much. I will do anything for that woman. This is Free Food for Millionaires by Jin Lee. It is multi-perspective about a Korean daughter named Casey Han, about her life in Manhattan, discovering who she is as a person, discovering how to please her parents, who she wants to be in the world, and it is a wonderful story. I read this after I read another book that may or may not be revealed in this video. So This book is a good summation of my book taste. Jin Lee has a wonderful way of putting a lot of important topics like feminism and poverty and religion and, you know, misogyny all in one book, and, you know, covering them equally and differently, and that is why she's my favorite author. And you will find out more about why she's my favorite author soon. It's my second favorite book of all time that we're gonna start talking about now. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. If you know, you know. I was very hesitant to read this book because this won Best Book of 2022. And I'm the kind of person that is like, I'm gonna read it once the hype dies down. Why is it popular? I don't understand why it's popular. And then I read it and I'm like, why didn't I read this sooner? Because this book is fantastic. I am not a video game player. I am a very anxious person. I am afraid to play Minecraft. There, I said it. I'm afraid to play Minecraft. But this book made me want to play video games because this book is about Sadie and Sam, who become childhood friends when they meet at a hospital. In college, they reconnect and start to develop games together. And you can tell how much research is put into this book. It covers their friendship over the course of 30 years, their career, their love lives, you know. It's a book about people. I love books about people. You know, I'm not much of a fantasy reader because I love realistic, raw, human experience. I read to forget, but I always remember because the books put me through it, but I love it. This book is amazing, and the plot twist literally had me reading it with a single tear streaming down my face because this book made me cry my eyes out. There is no reason that one book should be so devastating, but this one is. It is. And I loved it. It was fantastic. So frustrating. That's all I have to say about that one. I actually have a lot more to say about this one, but I don't want to like produce a 40-minute video. Next we have The Holy Grail, the book that I never
shut up about, because this book is fantastic, wonderful, amazing, heartbreaking. This book is everything that I want a book to be and more. I wish I could reread this book for the first time every single day.
I read this book after I recovered from my diabetic ketoacidosis when I first got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in the summer of 2022. So I was like finally having a clear head and I could finally remember stuff. I was like, I need to start reading. I wish I had a crown to put on this book, but I sadly don't. This is Pachinko by who? Jin Lee, my favorite freaking author of all time. I would read anything that she wrote. I would read her writing on a napkin that was crumpled up. I love her so much. Like I said, I would do anything for that woman. I would do anything to meet that woman. Please, please watch this video. I love you. #1 fan. #1 fan. This book walked so this book could run. This was her first book that she put out. She's been writing this one for 30 years and it shows. This freaking book is amazing. But this follows a family with the firstborn daughter, Sanja, and it covers 7 freaking generations. And I love them like they are my own family. She just writes and makes you love the characters like they're your own family. Sanja falls in love with a man that is like 20 years older than her, which that is sus. It is sus that some 35-year-old man is messing around with a 15-year-old. Like, why are you doing that, first of all? And she's like, I'm pregnant, let's get married. And he's like,
I'm already married.
What's his name? All I know is he is played by Lin Minho in the Pachinko show adaptation. And if you are a K-drama fanatic like me, you know how big of a deal that is. I hate that he is hot in the show because I hate him in the book. But sometimes it just be like that, okay? It starts off in 1910 and we end the story in like the 1970s. It covers her family for 70 freaking years and I ate this up. I wanted to cover this book for 100 years. Ignore the truck driving in the background. I wish I could stop everybody from making noise while I'm recording, but I can't. So I'm just gonna keep going. I've come to realize that this book covers like 7 members of the same family, but it's like 4 generations. Thanks to Steve, because I am not lying when I say that I actually did make Steve read this book. So Steve did not read this book on Steve's own. Steve read this because of me. And so did a few of my other coworkers, because I will not shut up about how good this book is. I listened to the audiobook and read the book at the same time. The lady who read this audiobook is my favorite narrator. Anyways, her mom owns like a, what's it called? That's what it is. It's a boarding house. Why didn't I know that? Why did it simple? Anyways, Sanja's family owns a boarding house. And when this very sick pastor with tuberculosis comes by to stay with them, he's like, I think it's my life's destiny to marry Sanja, because I am sheltering a child of God from being exiled by him or annexed. Is that the right word?
Annexation is, I mean, yeah, close enough.
I read, but I don't know words. Anyway. Anyways, so they get married. They have a child, 2 children, and it follows all of them in all multi-perspective glory and the hardships that they face and just everything. And like I said when I talked about Free Food for Millionaires, Jin Lee has a way of writing about all of these different topics are equally important in the story. Like every person deals with their own inner conflict, and just the way it flows from perspective to perspective. And I think Steve can agree. Right, Steve? I'm like threatening you behind the camera. I'm like, right, Steve?
Right.
Is so beautiful, and it really shows. You can really tell that she spent 30 years writing this book.
This book is heartbreaking. This book is hopeful, loving, devastating.
There are trigger warnings. Make sure you research trigger warnings before you like read any book that I recommend, because like I said, I like really sad books. I will tell you if they are sad books before I recommend them, obviously, but you should definitely look it up, because there are some, you know, sexual assault, suicide, murder, lots of stuff like that in this book. So it's very important to look that up before you read anything, really. Even in Tomorrow, you should definitely look that up, because there are definitely some stuff that not everybody who likes sad things like me can stomach. So, yeah. Those are my top 10 favorite books of all time. Yeah, thank you so much for watching my second video of all time. I can't believe that I even have the first video of all time. This is crazy. Stay tuned for my next video, and if you read any of these because of my recommendations, please let me know what you think about them. I love talking about books, especially books that I, you know, love so much. yeah, so I hope you're having a great day. And if you're watching this at night, I hope you're having a great night. Bye.